All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for Burglary at the Louvre. How can writers top this? The world is fascinated by the recent jewelry robbery at the Louvre, and so are the curators of crime. The curators of crime consist of mystery authors Connie Berry, Lane Stone, Nina Wachsman, and M.A. Monnin. And it is my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce Lane, who will be facilitating tonight's talk. Lane, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Robert. So I'm Lane Stone, and I write the art thriller trilogy, The Big Picture. The Collector was book one, followed by The Canvas, and Crimes and Sins will be coming out July of 2026. I wrote several cozy mystery series, and you all know what that is, before turning to writing thrillers. I live in Alexandria, Virginia, and Lewis, Delaware, with my husband and Cordy and Emma, who are standard schnauzers. And we four are the Curators of Crime. And I put our website in the chat. We write about art crime and about how the passion for art can lead to murder, obsession, and on October 19th, 2025, perhaps to a robbery at one of the great museums in the history of the world. So, how can we as fiction writers ever top what happened at the Louvre? In a murder mystery, the body is lying there. The victim is not going anywhere, at least not without a gurney. Not so for stolen art. Now imagine the artwork getting farther and farther from the investigator and through his or her eyes from you, the reader. Each step the art takes from that museum is a potential plot for us. And one question that we get all the time is, where do you get your ideas? And this is one way. Tonight, Nina Wachsman will put the crime in historical perspective to give you the scale of what was stolen. Then Connie Berry will talk about the criminals, actually those who've been apprehended so far, and the investigation using what the thieves left behind at the scene. Mary Monnin will talk about what was behind your, my, and the whole world's captivation with the event. And I'll finish by talking about what happens next. So here's a few housekeeping notes. For tonight's discussion, we'll use the term art crime to refer to antiquities, art, or antiques offenses. And as Robert said, put your comments in the chat and your questions in the Q&A. Each of us has an ebook to give away, and at the end of the evening, we'll choose winners from a random drawing of those who have commented. And we have a little freebie to thank you all for coming. And by the way, tonight's presentation will be in English, not French. So I am going to quickly share my screen to show you a quick video. This is a news program, sort of like our 60 Minutes that released this. It says the staff were alerted and one grabbed a guidepost, but the two thieves acted without being disturbed. She's like, give that to me, I'll go after him. One of the two thieves uses a disc grinder and his fist to steal the jewelry. Bam. His accomplice does the same before being joined by him. They both finally flee, dropping objects on the ground as they go. And in total, the scene or the incident lasts less than 4 minutes. Pretty wild, huh? So I I would like to conduct a quick poll right now. And let's just make this very informal. Just you can put this in chat, but do you think the robbery at the Louvre was an art or antiques crime, or was the robbery at the Louvre a commodities crime? And the reason we ask is that one necklace had 1,138 diamonds, two brooches had 2,500 diamonds, and a tiara had 1,083 diamonds and 24 sapphires. So put your answer in the comments. I'm curious about that. Now, Nina Wachsman will talk about the crime. She writes the Venice Beauties Mysteries, set in 17th century Venice. The Gallery of Beauties, The Courtesan's Secret, and the latest, The Courtesan's Pirate, which was a finalist for the 2025 Anthony Award. She's a graduate of the Parsons School of Design, where she studied illustration under Marie Sendak. That name just brings a smile to everybody's face, right? And brings her knowledge of art into most of her books and short stories. She lives in New York City with her husband and absolutely no pets. Nina,
Right.
how can we fiction writers ever top what happened at the Louvre?
I just want to let everybody know, if you saw the film also, you recognize that one of the leader was wearing that vest, so made him look like a worker. So
Mhm.
just make sure everybody knows the way they got in there is by moving a cherry picker in the broad daylight while everybody's waiting online to go into the Louvre, like regular tourists. They brought the cherry picker up to that second floor balcony window that led into that gallery that's called the Apollo Gallery, where they had the jewels. And they broke the window and he got in. And everybody saw him plain as day, this truck pulling up with the cherry picker. But because he was wearing this vest, people just assumed, he belongs. He's a worker. So that's very important that you recognize that fact. So what I do if I'm writing a book or when I'm writing a book, and I want to do a great crime, well, the first thing I want to do, because I write historicals, is I love to do the research. And I want to see where the bar is set before I can set it higher. So I looked at three other famous crimes. One was in the Louvre prior to this, so it was famous because it was in the Louvre, and that was what made the Mona Lisa famous, was the theft of the Mona Lisa in 1911. The second one was in the Isabel Gardner Museum, which was in the 1990s in Boston. And that's where they stole many masterworks and left the famous empty frames and has never been solved. And the third one, many people never heard of, but because I write about Venice, I know particularly about it, was the theft of the Madonna col Bambino from the Doge's Palace in Venice, which was like the city's mascot. Now, these three crimes had commonalities with the Louvre, with the current Louvre crime. One is they were a theft of high value objects. So, as a writer, if we're writing a story, we want to make sure that there's a lot at stake when you talk about what was stolen. It has to be something that everybody would recognize as being of high value and high importance. And all those three things. You had the Mona Lisa, even though it wasn't that famous at the time, and you had, these fabulous works from the Isabel Gardner Museum, and then this famous painting that was like the crown jewels of Venice. The other thing was all three of them were from places, famous places that you would think are impregnable. So that makes the challenge very high for a heist. And the third thing was the cleverness in which those three break-ins were done. So those are the three criteria that I looked at for if I was writing this and I had to write top it. Now, the one thing that the Louvre had, this current Louvre robbery had, that topped those other three was the audaciousness of it, because the other three crimes were done after hours. So this was the only one that was done in broad daylight while everybody was standing in line. I was there a month ago. I was standing in line with everybody else to go into the Louvre gallery. It happened right in front of everybody in broad daylight, and the audacity. So it was beyond cleverance. It was the audacity of the crime that captured our attention. So let's break it down a little bit. So the first crime, what I learned, was in 1911. The dominant aspect was that the thief was really the purpose, the reason the thief stole the Mona Lisa, because he was an Italian. He worked in the museum. He was a cabinet maker, and what he did, which is similar to the Venetian crime, is he hid in the museum. He came into the museum during the day hours and hid overnight in one of the cabinets that he created. And then after hours, came out and grabbed the painting. The security at that time was not what the security is at our time, but it did expose the lack of security. The interesting thing, if I was writing about this, is that he was not a professional thief. He didn't, and what did he do with the art afterwards? So that's something you got to think about also. What happens to the art, the object, after the crime?
Excuse me. I'm sorry, we seem to have a technical glitch here. I've had a couple people say they can see me, but not the speaker.
Oh,
Well, you are
I'm
the
not
best
sure.
looking.
I'm not sure what to do. Robert, is there a setting on your end that doesn't have all four of us?
Someone else, a couple people said I can see everyone fine. I can see the speaker. So maybe that person needs to go up on the top of their screen and push speaker setting.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
One thing I should have advised you folks is just ignore the chat.
Okay.
So we have over 350 people on the call. A few people are going to hit the wrong button. So don't pause for the other 349 people. Just
I saw Robert and I thought it was you. Okay.
Okay, back to Nina.
Okay. So as I was saying, what happened to the stolen object, the stolen jewels, the stolen painting afterwards is something to think about when you're writing a crime and you want to make it a fabulous story. So in the first case, in the original Louvre theft, what happened was the thief wanted to bring it back to Italy, but made no plans to do it. So he actually kept it under his bed for 2 years. So it's not a great story before he got it back to Italy eventually. The interesting thing that I think I would do if I was writing that as a mystery was pick up the angles of who was suspected, because some of the people that were suspected was Picasso and some other artists. So that would be the interesting angle in that one. In the Isabel Gardner Museum heist, again, it was a very famous gallery. The paintings that were stolen were some of the most beloved, famous paintings of Vermeer, Rembrandt. So the magnitude of the crime was felt. But again, the burglary happened after hours, but there's the cleverness that came in on that one. So what did they do? Just like in this current Louvre robbery, they wore policemen. They dressed as police, just like we had that, the Louvre, you saw him wearing the yellow vest, so he looked like a worker. But in the Isabel Gardner, they came after hours and they said they were police responding to a break-in in the gallery and that the guards should let them in. The guards let them in, and afterwards they tied them up, they stole the paintings. And as a result, with that, the paintings were taken. All we have left are empty frames, and we don't know what happened to them, even though there's still $10 million reward for their recovery. So that's very interesting because, they were successful. They were clever about it. They used a clever ruse to get in, and they were successful. Now, because I write about Venice, I had to see about some of the famous art in Venice. And one of the most famous places in Venice is the Doge's Palace. And there was this fabulous robbery in the 1990s where this painting called Madonna col Bambino, which was the equivalent of the crown jewels of Venice. It was their most famous painting. It sat in this gallery in the Doge's Palace for a couple hundred years. Like the Louvre theft, the thief gained access during the day. He went on a regular tour of the Doge's Palace, which everybody does. And part of the tour is you go from the palace section into the prisons, which are attached through the Bridge of Sighs. And so when he did that, there are lots of guards in the gallery section. There are no guards in the prison section because obviously there's nothing to steal there. So he stayed in the prison section till after hours, and then he snuck back over the Bridge of Sighs, grabbed the painting, and exited into the very busy Piazza, San Marco, which tons of tourists were, and disappeared. But the difference was that story is a story in itself, and I actually inspired a short story that I wrote about. The interesting thing about that story was both why he stole it, because he stole it because a famous gangster commissioned him to steal it. He was a well-known thief, known as the gentleman thief, because he stole distinctive art. That was his thing. And he stole this piece because the gangster was going to hold the painting for ransom in order to get the police to release his brother from jail. So right away, the Carabinieri, the police knew who stole it. There was only one man who could have pulled it off. So he was under pressure from the gangster to give him the piece of art. And then the Carabinieri said, you better get that piece of art back. Well, he did get the piece of art back. Eventually went back to the gallery, and the gangster got his brother back. And what did the thief get out of this whole scenario that he did? He got a dedicated parking spot for his boat in front of his apartment on the canal, only in Venice, right? So I would have to say, in my book, I use that feeling of that distinctive piece of art that is so much a part, that art object that is so much tied to your plot line. And my second book, which is called The Courtesan's Secret, an elite courtesan, Belladonna, is being stalked by a Spanish assassin. So she must leave her palazzo and she goes to hide in the Jewish ghetto of Venice, where she's not going to dress like a courtesan, obviously, but she has to take along her distinctive stash of jewels. A maid in the house that she's staying in steals those distinctive jewels. And again, getting back to what do they do with the art object after they steal it? The maid takes the art, takes it to be pawned at a jeweler. And because it's so distinctive, everybody knows it comes from Belladonna, who happens to be missing. So that moves the plot forward. So that distinctiveness of the art object drives the plot, because what happened, that's one of the things that we know. We say, what happened to the thing when it's stolen? So what about these heists make a good story? First of all, they're bold and they're clever. It captures our attention, our admiration of the reader, that they outsmart or outwit the going rules, and they're able to get it. The second one is the facade of security. We think these areas are impregnable, and yet they get through them. So it makes that challenge, which gives you the challenge and the daringness that you need in a great story. And then to me, the other important thing is what happens to the stolen objects afterwards. If they disappear, like in the Gardner Museum, that leaves a world of possibilities of what could secretly have happened to them. Or you could use, in which I did in my case, is I used the distinctive, they're pawning it. When they find it, it points in a certain direction that moves the story. So with that, I'll turn it over to Connie and Lane, who will talk a little bit about the criminals.
Thanks. And we have some great questions here. Just quickly, Nina, in your opinion, why do you think this crime was done during business hours and during the day?
I think because it was easier to get access.
Yeah.
And I think, Lane, you can talk about that too, is that the security measures are now set up so the places are impregnable after hours, but during hours, anybody could walk in. So I think that was the reason they were able to get in. And then the invisibility of wearing a uniform, wearing that vest, everybody ignores them. They think they belong.
Yeah. So someone said, why was Picasso suspected in the Mona Lisa heist? And I'll take that one if you don't mind.
Okay.
He had a friend who was a thief and had stolen a number of sculptures, and Pablo Picasso had some of those sculptures in his home. And so that's why the police originally looked at him. But the fun part starts when Picasso gets on the stand and that was what was funny. And okay, in this, I think we'll leave this for Connie. It didn't seem like the robbers had weapons. Why weren't they stopped by security? They have two kinds of guards. They have like minders, which those people you saw pretty much were gallery minders, and then security guards. And these minders had called security, but those people weren't real security guards.
Quick.
They're more like, don't touch that, don't, that kind of thing. Okay. Okay. And somebody said, wouldn't the thieves have taken all the jewels out and sold them individually? That is probably what will happen. But it's a different skill set, so it wouldn't be the same criminals.
Somebody did ask whether they got the Mona Lisa back, and they did.
Yeah.
Because when it went back to Italy, the Italian government because it was given by Leonardo, he painted it. Well, even though he painted it in Italy, he took it with him when he lived the end of his life in France. So he gave it was given among his belongings to, it was given back to France. And that's how it became famous, because before that it was just another painting.
Okay, Connie, and feel free to, add to what I said about um, the uniforms. Connie Berry is an unashamed Anglophile and self-confessed history nerd. She's the author of the USA Today best-selling and multi-award nominated Kate Hamilton Mysteries, set in the UK and featuring an American antiques dealer with the gift for solving crimes. Like her protagonist, Connie was raised by antiques dealers who installed in her a passion for history, fine art, and travel. Her latest book, A Grave Deception, was released in December and has been nominated for an Agatha Award for Best Contemporary Mystery of 2025. She lives in Ohio and northern Wisconsin with her husband and adorable Shih Tzu, Emmy. And Connie, what surprised you about the crime or the investigation? How did these perps, that we call these people the antagonists, how did they get caught? Because we know your protagonist would have outsmarted them.
Well, I hope my protagonist would have, but I hope it wouldn't have happened quite so quickly, because that wouldn't make much of a book, actually. Because, as Nina has said, for all their boldness, the main perpetrators were actually caught within days, and the rest of them, I think there were 4 core people and up to maybe 10 to 12 other people that have been pulled in, and some have been bailed, but there was a larger group, but really within a relatively short period of time. And that's the point, because they say that life is stranger than fiction, but life is often a lot less interesting than fiction as well, because as a whole, criminals do not tend to be, as a whole, criminals do not tend to be our brightest citizens. And I don't know if you remember, but I remember very well Jay Leno's Stupid Criminals. He would have that periodically. And my very favorite one was a criminal who was aware that the police were looking for his white Mitsubishi pickup, ditched it, stole another vehicle to put them off. Unfortunately for him, the car he stole was also a white Mitsubishi pickup. The criminals who stole part of France's history were not the brightest either. And I just want to say, my books do not all talk about art theft. My books talk about crime in and around the world of fine antiques and antiquities. Theft is involved in some of them, but I do want to begin with the fact that the Louvre is famous, or maybe I should say infamous, for art theft. And I'm going to try to screen share this, so bear with me here and make sure I can do it. Let's see if I can get on here. Okay. Content only is background. I have no idea. It didn't show this before. Oh well. I don't know if anybody can see this. It's sharing it. You probably can't. It's just too little. Let me try that. Okay, that's better. This was
So, Connie, we still can't see it though.
Oh, you
Give it
can't
one
see
more
it.
shot.
Okay. Okay, there you go. There. Now you can see it. This is a kind of a political cartoon from 1911. It was by the artist Samuel Earhart, and it shows, this is the Louvre, and there are the guards in it, and virtually everyone is stealing art from the museum. There was an inventory taken at the time that found that over 300 canvases were actually missing. However, and I'm going to stop screen sharing here to come back, victims of theft can be stupid too. And there was a little bit of that going on with the Louvre heist, because for our 2014 security audit at the Louvre revealed that the password for the Louvre security system was actually Louvre. So, what can authors learn from this most recent Louvre heist? Nina's talked about a lot of this. Their boldness and creativity. I mean, the Louvre. You would think, and I would think, that this museum, one of the most famous in the world, would have the very best security system in the whole world. And of course, the setting, over the top, one of the most famous museums in the world, the jewels, the historic jewels of the French royalty. and the boldness of the daylight robbery. This whole thing was so impressive. So when authors are writing about our crime, we have to think big. So, how interesting would it be in a novel to have someone steal your grandfather's paint by number project or your grandmother's collection of refrigerator magnets? That isn't going to be really interesting. So, in fiction, at least, the theft has to be both challenging, hard to pull off, and worth the risk. And Nina also talked about theft as an act of patriotism. And that is a big thing in the art world today, repatriotizing. I don't think that's a word, but you know what I mean.
Repatriation.
What did you say?
Repatriating.
Repatriating objects that were taken or stolen from places all over the world. And I just heard a comedian talk about, he said, the British Museum, why do they call it that? There's virtually nothing British in the museum. And these were people that went around, exploring and collecting things. He said, collectors, yes, Alibaba and the 40 collectors. So, these things mostly were taken without the permission of the country. But the first in my series, actually, A Dream of Death, it's set in the Scottish Highlands, involves a murder which recreates an infamous unsolved murder described in a novel. And the only clue to the killer's identity lies in a beautifully embellished marquetry box or casket. And my latest, A Grave Deception, involves an archaeological dig at a medieval village abandoned when the Black Death killed all but a handful of its citizens. So the point is, in fiction, we want to raise the stakes. We want to make it bolder, harder, more devastating, the loss more devastating, more clever, more shocking. And something else I think that authors need to think about is the investigation. So we've already talked about the criminals. They were bold, they had a big object, they took fabulous things. They weren't that bright because they were caught. And that's the investigation, because whenever we're writing about our crime, even if we're doing an amateur sleuth, there is going to be an investigation. The police will be doing that, even if it's off the page. And for all the brilliance of the Louvre heist, the criminals made it way too easy to catch them. First of all, they left their DNA everywhere, which actually makes me wonder why they didn't find DNA in the Gardner Museum. I'm really interested in that. We can talk about that later, Lane. But they left a jacket, they left gloves, they left a saw that has serial numbers in addition to DNA, they left a motorcycle helmet, parts of that cherry picker that they used to get up there had their DNA on it. And the French police actually processed more than 150 forensic samples from that crime scene: fingerprints, hair, fibers, skin cells. And secondly, the DNA was on the French database because they were known criminals. So it was very easy to find them. And by the way, the French DNA database is called the National Automated Genetic Fingerprint File, even though it now has more than fingerprints, but it's the most extensive in all of Europe with over 6 million samples. And the reason it is so successful in France is because if you refuse to give your DNA in France, you will spend up to a year in prison and pay a fine of the equivalent of 17,000 US dollars. So people tend to give their DNA. The one thing they did not make easy, unfortunately for the world, is the location of the jewels. And that actually is a mystery worthy of fiction. And we all hope that the police recover the items. But that's a problem in fiction as well. Because in fiction, readers want a resolution. The Louvre heist is a story without an ending yet. We don't know. And in fiction, we need an ending. And I think that the take home for authors, though, is we cannot forget about that forensic investigation. Gone are the days when brilliant sleuths used Edgar Allan Poe's ratiocination to solve crimes. Yes, the police do use psychology, they use profiling, sometimes they even resort to psychics to solve crimes, But these days, the vast majority of crimes are solved by forensics. And we can take the Nancy Guthrie case, for example, with the DNA that they've gotten, with the camera images. There are cameras everywhere today. And as authors, we have to take this into account. And if we don't want forensics to solve the crime, we have to show why it cannot. How did the police get it wrong? Was the DNA planted specifically to point them in the wrong directions? Something like that. But the point is, we have to take that into account. And that takes an additional level of research, even if our sleuths are amateurs, because our readers watch television. And they know a lot about forensics and about this kind of examination. And the last thing I want to say is that we cannot make it too easy. And I think that this means investigating our bad guys with a bit of intelligence and with a motive that isn't so mundane, just like money. And isn't that more interesting anyway?
Yeah,
So,
it is.
Lane, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. That was interesting. Thank you. We're at about the halfway point, and to thank you all for being here, we're putting a link for you to download some art-related screensavers. And let me do that right now. Okay. And if you can't open it, please just let us know or let Robert know, and we'll send you the link. Okay. Next, Mary will talk about our captivation with the crime. M.A. Monnin writes the intrepid traveler mysteries about an artifact retrieval team. Her debut novel, Death in the Aegean, was an Agatha nominee for the Best First Novel. The other books in her series involve thefts of jewelry with historic significance. Mary is an avocational archaeologist and a U.S. Air Force veteran. So thank you for your service, Mary. She lives in Kansas City, Missouri, with her husband and 2 Siberian Huskies. Mary, how do you explain how the whole world was captivated by the Louvre heist?
Well, it does seem like from the moment that thieves escaped with the jewels, the whole world has been fascinated by the robbery. A New York Times video and CNN report have both gotten over 1.4 million views, and all the major world news services carried this story. Reports from ABC, the Wall Street Journal, BBC, and France 24 have all gotten hundreds of thousands of views, and that's not even counting social media. Instagram alone has more than 5,000 posts about the Louvre robbery. So chances are that you have watched reports or posts about the heist. And yes, people are still talking about it now, 4 months later. Partly the reason why is the brazenness of the theft, which Lane, Nina, and Connie have covered. But I believe a driving factor for public interest is the items themselves. And I'm going to share my screen with you right here. Let me try. Let's see. Let's see. Can you see that? Oh, share. Let me see. Share. And let me.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so there's something inherently attractive about gold and jewels. The stolen pieces are all beautiful, wearable, glittering jewelry that once belonged to royalty. And according to French news BFM, there are a total of 8,482 diamonds, 35 emeralds, 34 sapphires, and 212 pearls in the 8 pieces that are missing. Now, I can't kid myself. Even if those were just loose jewels from a jeweler, that would be quite a haul. But set in jewelry, and jewelry once owned by royalty, and you add another layer of fascination. The item's historical value adds to their intrinsic value. French President Emmanuel Macron expressed it this way: the theft from the Louvre is an attack on a cultural asset that we value because it's part of our history. He said that modernization of Louvre security will ensure the preservation and protections of what makes up our memory and our culture. Another politician said the theft was a wound to the French soul. These items might not be from our immediate culture, but historical artifacts in some sense belong to all of us as citizens of the world, as part of our shared human history. When they're stolen, we feel the loss. And whether we ever plan to go to France to see them or not, that opportunity has been taken away from us. So Interpol recognizes the importance of cultural heritage and has an entire department devoted to it. Their cultural heritage crime department considers art crimes important enough to publish wanted posters. And here, those of you who have read my Intrepid Traveler mysteries are familiar with Interpol's most wanted works of art posters, and here's the one for the Louvre heist. So what we have here, the first one is Empress Eugenie's diamond bow brooch. She was the wife of Napoleon III, and this brooch was a favorite of hers. It was originally just a bow, and she had a jeweler add the embellishment so she could wear it as a stomacher ornament. Next to that is her pearl and diamond diadem. And Empress Eugenie loved jewelry so much, her patronage helps launch Cartier's career. So you know there's big bucks there. Next, we have emerald earrings and an emerald necklace from a parure, which is a set meant to be worn together. And these belong to Marie Louise, which was Napoleon's the First's second wife. Excuse me. On the bottom row, we have sapphire earrings, necklace, and a diadem, all once belonging to the queens of the First French Empire, Queen Marie Amélie and Queen Hortense. These are all salon sapphires with natural color, which means they haven't been attained to, they haven't been heated to attain a deeper color, which is what happens with most colored stones today. So number 8, the very last one, the reliquary brooch, I think is the most interesting. It also belonged to Empress Eugenie, and it has a deeper history than just that. It contains 2 of the Mazarin diamonds, which were a set of 18 numbered diamonds that Cardinal Mazarin bequeathed to Louis XIV in 1661. So diamonds number 17 and 18 are the ones in the center that look like the butterfly wings. Now, the 9th item stolen, Empress Eugenie's crown, was dropped as the thieves escaped and damaged. Did any of you let out a gasp of dismay when you heard that? I did. Take a look at this. Here's Empress Eugenie's crown before it was damaged and after. That just looks like a crime in itself. Yeah. But have no fear, the Louvre jewelers are going to repair it, and it won't be a problem. So as a writer, I hope to captivate you in the same way that the world has been captivated by this crime. Both my first book, Death in the Aegean, and my upcoming 4th book, Death in Luxor, involve museum heists like the Louvre theft. Each of my Intrepid Traveler mysteries centers around the theft of an artifact that, like the items stolen from the Louvre, incorporate 3 components. Each is beautifully crafted, made of valuable material, and each has historical interest. So I want to grab you, the reader, with those same components, enticements. They're the same qualities that attract a thief who might covet a beautiful piece of jewelry or crave an intimate connection with the piece, or might simply want to sell it to the highest bidder. Now here I'm going to show you, here's a fun look at the artifacts that I've used in my books. And please forgive their simplicity. I've used what I can to convey what they look like. So in Death in the Aegean, the gold Akrotiri snake goddess statue is stolen. It's attractive due to the intrinsic value of the gold, the craftsmanship of the piece itself, which is an example of Minoan gold work, and its historical context. Akrotiri was a sophisticated Bronze Age city when Santorini was destroyed by a massive volcanic eruption, and that destruction became the inspiration for Plato's Atlantis. In Death on the Grand Canal, my theft target is the Borgia peacock, a Renaissance pendant encrusted with sapphires and emeralds commissioned by Rodrigo Borgia before he became Pope Alexander VI. It was a time when people liked to advertise their wealth and their jewelry, and the gaudier the better. And you can see that by my looking at the genuine Renaissance pieces, pendants in my inspiration pieces. In Death in St. George's, the stolen item is an emerald and gold filigree bracelet that was being brought from the New World to Spain. It ended up in Bermuda after the Spanish treasure fleet ship it was on wrecked off the coast of Bermuda. So old mine emeralds were harder stones, which makes them higher quality than the ones mined there today, or at least mined there in Colombia. So I think mystery readers are a curious bunch, and I know many readers enjoy looking up the historical aspects that I use in my books. But getting back to the world's fascination with the Louvre heist, I want to share this photo. Oh, and this is the man in the fedora. So this photo went viral, getting over 5 million views worldwide as everybody wanted to know more about the detective. The reality is pretty funny. His name is Pedro Elias Garzon Delvaux, and he's a 15-year-old who went to visit the Louvre that day with his family, but found that it was closed because of the theft. He dresses that way regularly, inspired by statesmen and fictional detectives. And it was weeks before he admitted it was his picture because, as he says, I didn't want to say immediately it was me. With this photo, there's a mystery, so you have to make it last. So I really like that attitude. I have to agree. Everybody loves a good mystery. In my books, the thief is always caught and the jewelry is always returned because I know readers want a happy ending. And part of our fascination with the Louvre theft is the fear that the jewels will be destroyed, that they'll be dismantled and the gold melted down. French prosecutor Laura Bissot announced the worth of the stolen items, $102 million, in hopes that the robbers would think twice and not break them down because the thieves would not pocket the full windfall if they had the very bad idea of melting down the jewelry. I do hope the missing jewels will be found intact, but I have my doubts. In the meantime, police around the world remain on alert for the missing jewels. So, Elaine, what can we take away from this?
Well, writers in movies and TV type the end when they finish a manuscript. I don't know if anybody does that anymore in books, but anyway, the crime isn't the end. It's really the beginning, isn't it? Now, we'll end by talking about possible plot ideas based on what might happen after the robbery, in addition to the investigation and arrests. 3 questions occur to me. Will it happen again? Will the loot be recovered intact? And will anything change in museum security? Okay, so will it happen again? Christopher Marinello, founder of Art Recovery International and an attorney specializing in art restitution, predicts that there will be more museum heists because of the sky-high price of gold. Just a month before this robbery, France's National Natural History Museum was broken into and about $700,000 worth of gold was stolen. The thieves used an angle grinder, does that sound familiar, and a blowtorch. To combat that, he says we need a cultural heritage terrorism law because everyday art crime results in light sentences. And one of you put the question, these thieves were so cavalier, it's like they wanted to get caught. And someone could have made a deal with them, knowing that they would get a light sentence, like here's X million of dollars if you're willing to go to jail for 4 or 5 years. Okay, speaking of everyday art crime, findings from an audit that was already underway by the French government were leaked, and they talked about the problem of over-tourism. Remember, we're talking about the most visited museum in the world. Last year, the museum began limiting visitors to 30,000 a day. This month, the entry price for non-EU citizens was raised to $37 per person. But with this many people, security equipment and methods become obsolete faster. The now former museum director, Laurence Descartes, has lobbied for a police station inside the museum. Next, will the jewels be recovered intact? About 80% of you said that this was a commodity crime, and 20% of you said it was an art crime. Now, if you said commodities crime, as I did, you believe the point was to break the items down into 5,000 plus saleable parts, mostly diamonds. These diamonds were old European cut, designed to look good in candlelight. Today, most buyers want a modern cut diamond because we have electric lighting. So these diamonds may have to be recut. And these vintage cuts have seen a little growth in popularity and value because of Taylor Swift's engagement ring. But of course, it would be a huge red flag to have that many old European cut diamonds enter the market. So they'll have to be taken to craftsmen, maybe in Antwerp or Israel, for people with that skill set. Now that means this group doesn't mind playing a long game. We already knew that because of their level of planning, including surveillance. My third question was, what will stay the same? Because even authors can't change these. And what may be different in the future for museum security? One thing that will stay the same, museums will still have to balance beauty and risk. That's difficult when you consider how old some of our most beloved museum buildings are. The Louvre became a museum in 1783, but it was a royal residence before that. There are unique security challenges. While something like original doors are magnificent, they can also leave the museum vulnerable to threats like forced entry. Something else that will stay the same is museum will always have to balance access with risk. Art, in this case jewels, in a museum is protected differently from other valuables, say money in a bank. For a museum to act as guardians for our collective memory, something that Mary alluded to, people have to experience it and not from too great a distance. Now, what's changing? Philip Yost, the Notre Dame Cathedral restoration chief, was appointed to reorganize the museum. And many see it as a sign that people have lost confidence with Director Laurence Descartes. Though she has lobbied for money for security upgrades since 2021. I can see that being part of a plot. And of course, when she tendered her resignation earlier this week, at first it wasn't accepted, and then Macron did accept it. And as I said earlier, the director of the Palace of Versailles will replace her. Something else will change. The museum's security became a political football. One party on the right of the spectrum, the National Rally Party, called it a national humiliation and said, how far will the decay of the state go? Nothing like a little rancor to get our slews giving someone a closer look. And something else, this I feel like is the most interesting, and I've saved it for last. Some of the museum's most valuable jewels are now in the Bank of France for safekeeping. Under police escort, the secret transfer took place on October the 24th, with the items now stored in the bank's ultra-secure underground vault. And this is real, located 26 meters, that's 85 feet below ground in central Paris. The vault is home to 90% of France's gold reserves, to Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, and other national treasures. And it's guarded by a 20-inch thick 7-ton door and a 35-ton rotating concrete turret designed to resist all forms of forced entry or attack. And if that doesn't give you ideas for a plot, nothing will. Let's go ahead and give away the ebooks, and then we'll go back to the Q&A. Okay, Connie, she's going to be giving me an ebook of Grave Deception. Connie, who is your winner?
My winner is Jim Tellock, Tellock, and we are going to put our websites in the chat.
Yeah.
And so people have also been asking where they can find our books. And I think if you go to our websites, which are going to be listed, Lane, are you going to do that?
Yes, I will. Okay.
Then you can find our books, where to get them. You can also get them at libraries, of course, but we hope that some of you buy them, which keeps us writing. But yeah, so Jim, if you would just contact me and give me your email, which I don't have, then I will make sure you get the ebook.
Okay. Nina, who is your winner? You're muted.
I also have a cold, so I hope you can hear me. Suzanne Fuchs, Fuchs. So if you email me also, I will send you a book as well.
Okay. Mary?
I've got Eileen Harrington. Go ahead and email me, contact me through my website contact form, and give me your email, and I will send you an ebook.
And I have Ann Bresnick. And if you will let me know your email address, I will send you an book of The Collector, because this is a trilogy and you really need to read the first book first.
And
Okay, so
Jim, I have your email. Thank you very much.
Oh,
I will
yeah,
get
that's
it
a
to
good.
you very soon.
yeah,
Their chat only goes to us, the hosts. So yeah, so
Perfect.
Eileen Harrington, if you'd like to put your email in the chat, you can, because it just shows to Robert and the four of us,
Yeah, and
yeah.
same
or
for
or,
me,
or
Suzanne
contact me.
Fuchs.
Excellent.
You
Thank
can
you.
also put in it.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out for those. So there's so many good questions in here, I
Yeah, we got a
swear.
lot.
Um, let me see.
Uh, uh,
Can you comment on the new head of the Louvre? I really don't know anything about him. Like I said, he's been the director of the Palace of Versailles. I don't know. It seemed like the most exciting piece of news, though, was when the person that oversaw the renovation and the repair of Notre Dame was selected to oversee the a renovation of the Louvre. And I also think it was interesting that for the crown that Mary showed you, for that to be rehabbed, restored. They took bids for that, and they really are getting some of the best people in the world to do that. Were any of the Louvre burgers already in sight, or did they all come through the window? Two came through the window and two waited on the ground.
yeah.
Yeah. Why is it so difficult to solve the Gardner heist, in your opinion? I'll give you my opinion. I think the mafia was involved, and
Oh,
there's so much there so it doesn't matter how much I mean, the reward is incredible, and but is it worth it? So somebody else weigh in on that. Why do you think?
I also think it was like an organized crime or something like that because first of all, they tried to see if it was there was some rumor that it was an inside job that one of the
Hmm.
guards was planted inside, but I don't think that ever came through. And it just disappeared so quickly without a trace. It was so well organized, and it seems like those paintings were, if and I believe that one was an art theft that somebody wanted to own those paintings. So
Hmm.
whether it's the Russian mafia or the Italian mafia or somebody or the Chinese mafia, somebody
Hmm.
wanted, I think that was a coveted painting heist, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
somebody had the money and the organization to do it.
Hmm.
that actually is one of the motives for our crime. Patriotism, repatriating items, money.
Hmm.
But the other one is commissioned thefts
Yeah.
Hmm.
by an unusual person who is very wealthy and has a lust for owning famous objects. And that person does not care. He's not going to put the pictures up in his living room and invite friends over to admire them and see how much money he has. He is going to keep them for himself or herself and just be able to look at them privately. And for some reason, that feeds their soul, and they're willing to pay for that. So that is another possibility. Probably not the major one, but it is one.
Yeah.
It's a good type of plot element to have a character as your bad guy like that who has
Yeah.
unlimited money and resources and just
Yeah.
has this crazy passion for the art.
Hmm. Hmm. I have someone like that in
Mhm.
my books.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just, I mean, they're still learning more. And about a year ago, they put together all of this information about what someone, if you just ran into a museum, what would you probably steal? And these things did not, because of the size, they did not fit that pattern. And so
Hmm.
that's why they think that they were picked out and said, go
targeted.
get me this. So Mary, you want to add to that?
No, I was just going to say targeted, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
They were
exactly.
targeted.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. With the fiasco of Notre Dame burning and the Louvre theft, and with so many treasures in France, how can they possibly be trusted to safeguard them? Um, n- I don't know. I mean, you're always going to have this tension between letting people see the art and having some risk.
But I
Um,
think it also raises the stakes because these are national treasures too. And that is a national issue. As you said, it became a political one, right? There are
Mhm.
political reasons. And that raises the stakes. In my book, when they identify the jewels as belonging to Belladonna and it's in the ghetto, it gives political reasons for them to come in and ransack the ghetto. So there's always a political motive, and especially in France, where there's like you were saying, the tensions between the right or left. You can use the burning of the Notre Dame and the theft of these two big thefts. You can say, where is the government? Our government is ineffective. They don't have the right things in place, and it
yeah,
becomes for a writer, that's great stuff because you're not only having a theft, you're having a theft that could cause a major, shift in government even and shift in
Yeah,
the
that's
country's
true.
politics.
yeah,
And that's one of the very sad things about this. And Lane talked about the access versus the risk, and the objects now are very safe. We assume they're very safe, but
Hmm.
no one can see them.
Right.
No one can see them. And so they're going to have to decide what to do. And I'm thinking about the British crown jewels, which are in this very
Yeah.
special
yeah,
facility, super, super safe, but people can actually see them. So there is that balance, and hopefully future generations will be able to admire these historical treasures.
yeah. One of my professors said about the jewels in the Tower of London, all that. She said we were talking about the one particular piece, and she says, "Oh, that's not the real one. Those are fakes in there." That's
Are
one way
they?
to keep it safe, right?
I don't think so, but it's possible, I suppose.
Yeah,
But it's a very well kept secret then.
yeah, yeah. And somebody said, weren't there alarms on the cases? And there were, and they did go off.
Yeah.
Um, but they were in there for 4 minutes, and the whole thing lasted 8 minutes. Um,
There was
okay.
also a question, how long had the jewelry been an exhibit? And I know it's been there in a long time. They did redo that, the whole Napoleon galleries, because they used to have it a lot more accessible, where they had like an exhibit where they showed the crown and the royal robes, on a figure. And then they moved it into those cases later on. So there was some effort to make it more protected. But there's been so many articles written again
Mhm.
criticizing governments for how lax the security is about, on these very famous jewels.
Yeah,
I'm wondering, I live in New York City, and in the Natural History Museum, they have the Hope Diamond in
yeah.
there.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And they recently had a exhibit called Bling, and it was all the bling and diamonds of rappers. So, and
Oh,
there wasn't any extra security. There was the same old, same old. So,
yeah.
maybe they have things wired behind the scenes in
Hmm.
cases, but it seemed like the wiring went off anyway,
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
Louvre. So,
Yeah. And Jeanette brings up the book, The Art Thief, which I read a few months ago. The Art Thief, A True Story of Love, Crime, and Dangerous Obsession by Michael Finkel. And it's about a guy in France. He was in France? Yeah. And he and his girlfriend um, went around stealing, and she would be on the lookout, and he would go in and steal, mostly from what is called house museums, and that doesn't mean it's a house or it's small or anything like that, but they were like the most prolific art thieves ever,
mhm.
um, and that he felt like these places didn't deserve to have it, and he loved it, and he could take care of it better. And
Mm,
so that's a time, and he never sold anything.
mm. It's interesting.
Okay.
Sounds like a good book.
Yeah. 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 Any DNA collect. Yeah. Like, what did you say, Connie? Like 150, you know,
Samples, DNA samples.
DNA samples. Yeah. Um, and I'm trying to think if I've got,
There,
I'm trying to like combine some of the
there's
questions.
an interesting question by Christine, and it says they caught two or four of the Louvre thieves. Did they release them? Are they holding them? And they have not given up the location of the jewels.
Yeah.
Mm.
So do any of you have an update on that? Are they just
Well,
refusing to say, or
yeah, no one has talked. And
yeah?
they have the four that actually participated in the thief, they they are not being they can't get out on bail. They've been charged and they will not get on bail because one of them, remember, they caught at the airport on his way to Algeria.
Hmm.
But the other person, the only one I know of that got bail is the woman who helped. And when the last time they saw the thieves was when they were in a parking garage, and the
Right.
woman owned like three of those parking spots, and they met up there together, and so they know she
And
was.
they took out the jewels to look at them. They caught that
Yeah,
on camera.
yeah. So somebody says if this was a heist in a book, would people think it was unbelievable? Yeah. Yeah. And Robert says maybe one or two more questions. We're about to get the hook, I think.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
We
What do
are.
each of you consider the most intriguing art heist of all time? Why don't we each give that and then we'll say goodnight?
Well, for
Well, I
me, I
like the
don't,
Louvre.
you like the Louvre? The one I heard about was at the Great Exhibition in the 1890s, and there was an entire wall that Monet painted in the exhibition. And you remember there was a big fire there. Well, after the fire, the embers went out and they went to collect it. That big wall with his painting was gone. They've never
Wow.
found out how do you get out a wall,
Yeah.
a Monet wall?
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
knows. To me,
That's
that's the big mystery.
that's respect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Connie?
My most famous was this theft of a Jan van Eyck Dutch painting, but I do have to be honest here and say that was fictional because it was in my book.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite, I have a new favorite because it just happened this week. It's the opposite of a theft. Well, it's a group of anti-billionaires. It's called Everyone Hates Elon. And they
Ah,
took that photograph of Andrew, used to be Prince Andrew, in the back of
Yeah.
the car. And they had it elaborately framed and they put it in the Louvre. And the staff saw it, and they saw that it was there. Like it was up for 15 minutes, and the staff saw it and and got rid of it. But that just cracked me up. And I've always said that more art is snuck into museums than is
mhm.
stolen out of it. Because
One
people,
of
Yeah.
our people in the audience mentioned that in the chat.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that photo.
it was, yeah. So
But I thought that was interesting too, that there are many artists who try to sneak their work and put it
mhm,
up in major museums.
yeah, yeah.
That's the more common crime.
All right, well, this has been so much fun.
Yes, thank
I've
you.
just I've enjoyed your comments and your questions, and we've just enjoyed being here. So thank you, Robert. You're the best.
Yes,
Yeah.
we enjoy it.
Thank
So,
Bye,
you.
folks,
everybody.
let's give Lane, Connie, Nina, and MA a big virtual round of applause. Look for an email from me tomorrow with a link to this recording. Please take the feedback survey when you exit the Zoom. And just to clarify something I said, when I said ignore the chat, I didn't mean ignore the comments. I meant ignore the technical difficulty
Okay.
comments
Okay.
Yeah,
questions.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
And I was getting around to addressing several of them, most of which I think were user error. Sometimes it depends on if they're using a tablet or a phone or a laptop, or are they using the app, or are they using their browser? Is their browser up
um,
to date? Are they using the newest version of Zoom, et cetera, et cetera? But when there's 350 people on the call and only one person has an issue, it's generally that one person and not Zoom itself. So anyway, just want to put that caveat in there. So I didn't want people to think I ignored the chat. All right. So thank you all so much. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their night. Thanks again.
bye
Yeah.
bye.
Uh,
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.